The sky above Velcros Prime burned with dying ships. Commander Velthor stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching another cruiser explode in silent orange flame. 3 years of war had brought his people to the edge of extinction. The Draknari Empire, once proud and undefeated, now counted their remaining vessels on 2 hands. The Centrax coalition had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior coordination. Every battle ended the same way. The Draknari fought with courage and honor, as their ancestors had for 10,000 years, and every time they lost, Velthor's communication officer approached with hesitant steps. The young soldier's scales were pale with stress. "Commander, the raiding party has returned from the mining colony. They found something unusual." "Unusual how?" Velthor asked without turning from the window. "They found a survivor, sir, a human." That made Velthor turn. Humans were rare in this sector of space. Their homeworld Earth was known throughout the galaxy, but mostly as a curiosity. A species that had barely begun exploring beyond their own solar system. Militarily insignificant by any standard that mattered. "Why bring it here?" Velthor asked. "The squad leader thought you might want to question it. The human was on a destroyed research vessel. Could be a spy." Velthor considered ordering the human spaced immediately. He had no time for distractions. But curiosity won over exhaustion. "Bring it to interrogation room 3. The human sat alone in the bare metal room, hands bound behind his back. He was smaller than Velthor expected, perhaps 6 feet tall in human measurements. Dark hair, dark eyes, and a face that looked tired beyond its years. The human wore civilian clothes stained with dust and blood. Velthor entered with 2 guards. The human looked up but showed no fear. That was interesting. Most species cowered before Draknari warriors. "I am Commander Velthor of the Draknari Imperial Fleet. You will answer my questions truthfully, or you will be executed as a spy." The human nodded slowly. "My name is Daehyun. I'm not a spy. I was hauling freight through this sector when my ship was caught in the crossfire. Freight hauler." Velthor's voice dripped with contempt. "What cargo? Medical supplies, mining equipment, food. Nothing military." "I'm not a soldier anymore." "Anymore." Velthor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Daehyun hesitated. "I served in Earth's Defense Forces. Strategic Planning Division. I left 3 years ago." "Why did you leave?" "That's my business." One of the guards struck Daehyun across the face. The human's head snapped to the side, blood appearing at the corner of his mouth. But when he looked back at Velthor, his expression remained calm. "You are in no position to keep secrets, human." Daehyun spat blood onto the floor. "I was court-martialed. Discharged. I refused an order to bombard a civilian city. Saved a lot of lives but lost the battle. My superiors decided I was a liability." Velthor studied the human carefully. A strategist who put morality above victory. Weak, useless. He turned to leave. "Your defensive formation is wrong," Daehyun said quietly. Velthor stopped. "What did you say?" "I saw the tactical display on my way here. Your fleet positioning follows a standard honor guard pattern. Very traditional. Very predictable. That's why you're losing." The room went silent. One of the guards raised his weapon, ready to strike again, but Velthor raised a hand to stop him. He walked back to the human slowly. "You dare critique Draknari military doctrine? We have fought wars for millennia before your species left their planet. And you've been fighting the same way for all those millennia," Daehyun replied. "The Centrax have adapted to you. They know exactly what you'll do before you do it. You're brave, you're skilled, but you're predictable." Velthor felt rage building in his chest. This insignificant creature from an insignificant world dared to insult his people's warrior traditions. He should kill it now and be done with it, but something held him back. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was the fact that every strategy his people had tried had failed. Perhaps it was the small voice in his head that said this human might be right. "If you are so brilliant," Velthor said coldly, "what would you do differently?" Daehyun looked up at him. "Untie me and give me access to your tactical database. Let me study your past engagements. Give me 12 hours, and then I'll tell you exactly how to win your next battle. If I'm wrong, you can space me. If I'm right, maybe you'll start listening." Velthor stared at the human for a long moment. Every instinct told him to refuse. To maintain the honor and dignity of his people. To not accept help from an alien who knew nothing of Draknari ways, but his people were dying. His empire was falling, and this human, this discharged strategist from a backwater world, was offering him something he desperately needed. Hope. Very well, Velthor said finally. You will be given access to our tactical archives under guard. You will have your 12 hours. But if you attempt anything suspicious, you will be killed immediately. Daehyun nodded. Fair enough. Velthor assigned a young officer named Taemin to guard the human. Taemin had studied Earth culture in his youth and spoke the human language fluently. He was also loyal and capable, which meant he would kill the human without hesitation if necessary. For the next 12 hours, Daehyun sat in a small room surrounded by holographic displays. Battle data from 3 years of war floated around him. Ship movements, casualty reports, communication logs, everything. Taemin watched from the corner, weapon ready. Daehyun worked in silence, occasionally asking questions about Draknari technology or tactics. Taemin answered cautiously, revealing nothing that could compromise security. The human seemed genuinely focused, his eyes moving rapidly across the data streams. As the deadline approached, Velthor returned to the room. Several senior officers accompanied him, including General Raxthor, the most traditional of the Draknari commanders. Raxthor had opposed bringing the human aboard and made no secret of his contempt. Your time is up, human, Velthor announced. What have you learned? Daehyun stood, manipulating the holographic display with tired hands. You've lost 17 major engagements in the past 3 years. In every single one, you followed the same basic pattern. Form an honor guard around your command ship. Advance in formation, engage the enemy in direct combat. As is proper, Raxthor growled. We are warriors, not cowards who hide in shadows. And that's why you're losing, Daehyun said bluntly. The Sentrax know your patterns. They position their heaviest ships exactly where your honor guard will be. They target your predictable formations with prepared firing solutions. You're not fighting a war, you're performing a ritual they've learned to exploit. Velthor felt his jaw tighten. What would you have us do instead? Daehyun expanded the holographic display. Intelligence suggests the Sentrax will attack the colony world Rexar 7 within the next week. Let me plan the defense. I'll show you what happens when your enemy can't predict your moves. Unacceptable, Raxthor snarled. We will not take orders from this creature. But Velthor was staring at the display, seeing possibilities he had never considered. False retreats, hidden weapon platforms, feints within feints. It was dishonorable by Draknari standards. It was also brilliant. You will have your chance, human, Velthor said quietly. Fail and you die. Succeed and we will discuss your future. Daehyun met his eyes. I won't fail. The preparation room buzzed with tension. Daehyun stood before a massive holographic map of the Rexar 7 system, surrounded by Draknari officers who looked at him with open hostility. Taemin remained at his side, translating when needed and providing explanations about Draknari ship capabilities. The colony has 3 orbital defense platforms, Daehyun explained, highlighting positions on the map. Currently, they're positioned in a triangle formation around the primary settlement. Standard defensive posture. Correct, Velthor confirmed. This arrangement has protected Draknari colonies for centuries. And the Sentrax have been destroying colonies for 3 years, Daehyun countered. They know where your defenses will be. I want to move 2 platforms to these coordinates. He indicated positions that seemed random, far from the colony itself. General Raxthor stepped forward, his large frame blocking the light. Those positions leave the colony exposed. You would sacrifice our people for your strange tactics? I would save them, Daehyun replied calmly. The Sentrax will expect your platforms in standard position. They'll plan their approach accordingly. When they arrive and find the platforms elsewhere, they'll have to adjust. That moment of confusion is when we strike. With what? Another officer demanded. We have only 12 ships to defend the system. Daehyun smiled slightly. We have 12 ships they know about. What if we had more? He manipulated the display, showing ship movements. We'll position 6 ships in obvious defensive positions. The other 6 will hide in the asteroid field here. Powered down, silent. When the Sentrax engage our visible forces, they'll commit fully. Then our hidden ships activate and hit them from behind. The room erupted in argument. Half the officers called it brilliant. The other half called it cowardly. Raxthor's voice rose above the others. Deception. Hiding like prey animals. This is not the Draknari way. Velthor raised his hand for silence. The Dreknari way has brought us to the edge of extinction. I will allow the humans' plan. Raxthor, you will command the visible defense force. I will lead the hidden fleet personally. Raxthor's expression showed barely controlled rage, but he bowed stiffly. As you command. Over the next 5 days, Daehyun worked constantly. Taemin stayed with him, initially as a guard, but gradually becoming something more like an assistant. The young Dreknari had always been curious about other species, particularly humans. Now he watched one work with intense focus. Why did you really leave Earth's military? Taemin asked one night as they reviewed firing patterns. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. I told your commander the truth. I refused to bomb a city full of civilians. My superior said the enemy was using them as shields, that we had to strike regardless of casualties. But you refused. I found another way. Took longer. Cost us strategic advantage, but we captured the city without killing thousands of innocent people. My superiors called it weakness. Said I let emotions override military necessity. Taemin tilted his head, a gesture of curiosity in Dreknari body language. Do you regret it? I regret that I couldn't find a solution that satisfied everyone. But I don't regret saving those lives. Daehyun looked at the young officer. Would you have bombed the city? Taemin considered carefully. Dreknari culture values honor above all else. But honor means protecting those weaker than ourselves, not destroying them. I think I would have made the same choice you did. That's probably why we get along, Daehyun said with a tired smile. The Centrax arrived exactly when intelligence predicted. 15 warships, a standard raiding force. More than enough to overwhelm 12 defenders using conventional tactics. From his position in the asteroid field, Velthor watched the enemy approach on his tactical display. Everything was as the human predicted. The Centrax moved confidently, their formation designed to crush a standard Dreknari defense. Raxthor's 6 ships held position near the colony, weapons powered but not firing. The Centrax commander must have been suspicious of how few ships defended such an important target. But greed won over caution. They accelerated toward the planet. They're taking the bait, Taemin whispered from his station aboard Velthor's flagship. Daehyun stood nearby, observing everything with intense concentration. The Centrax fleet spread out, preparing to overwhelm the defenders from multiple angles. Raxthor's ships began a fighting retreat exactly as Daehyun had instructed, though the general clearly hated every moment of appearing to flee. Now, Daehyun said quietly. Velthor gave the order. 6 Dreknari warships came to life in the asteroid field, their weapons already locked onto the Centrax rear guard. The surprise was total. The first volley destroyed 3 Centrax ships before they could react. The second volley crippled 2 more. Suddenly the hunters became the hunted. The Centrax commander tried to reorganize, but Daehyun had predicted that too. The orbital defense platforms, positioned in their strange locations, now had perfect firing angles on the confused enemy formation. Raxthor's retreating ships reversed course and attacked with renewed fury. The battle lasted only 18 minutes. When it ended, 12 Centrax ships were destroyed or disabled. 3 escaped to hyperspace. The Dreknari lost only 1 vessel, damaged but repairable. The bridge of Velthor's flagship erupted in celebration. Dreknari warriors roared in triumph, their voices echoing through the metal corridors. It was their first major victory in over 2 years. Velthor approached Daehyun slowly. The human stood apart from the celebration, looking exhausted and somehow sad despite the victory. You have proven yourself, human. The Dreknari High Command will hear of this. You will be offered a position as strategic advisor. Daehyun nodded slowly. Will your people accept taking advice from an alien? Some will. Some will not. General Raxthor and his faction view this victory as tainted by dishonor, but I view it as the first step toward survival. Velthor paused. You understand that many will hate you for this? I'm used to being hated for making the right choice, Daehyun replied quietly. Taemin approached, carrying 2 containers of Dreknari victory drink. He offered one to Daehyun, who accepted it cautiously. To the first victory, Taemin said, raising his container. Daehyun raised his as well. To the first of many. They drank together while around them Dreknari warriors celebrated. But Daehyun's mind was already moving forward, already planning the next engagement. One victory meant nothing. The Centrax had hundreds of ships. He needed to find a way to not just win battles, but to end the war itself. That night, alone in his assigned quarters, Daehyun reviewed casualty reports. Even in victory, people had died. Draknari warriors who would never see their families again. It was necessary, he told himself. The alternative was extinction for an entire species. But the weight of those deaths settled onto his shoulders anyway, joining all the others he carried. He wondered, not for the first time, if there was ever truly a clean victory in war. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Taemin entered carrying food. "The commander thought you might forget to eat," the young Draknari said. "He was right, I see." Daehyun accepted the food gratefully. "Thank you." Taemin sat across from him. "The crew is calling you the Ghost. They say you see what others cannot, that you anticipate the enemy's moves like a spirit reading minds. I just pay attention to patterns. The Sentrax are predictable once you understand their doctrine. Perhaps, but I think it's more than that. I think you see war differently than we do. Draknari fight for honor and glory. You fight to end the fighting as quickly as possible." Daehyun smiled sadly. "Is that so different from what you want?" "Maybe not," Taemin admitted. "But it's not what we're taught to want. Glory is supposed to matter more than efficiency. Honor more than survival. And which matters more to you?" Taemin was quiet for a long moment. "I used to know. Now I'm not so sure." They sat together in comfortable silence, an unlikely friendship forming between a disgraced human strategist and a young Draknari officer. Outside, the war continued. But in that small room, two people from different worlds found common ground. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Sentrax would be analyzing the defeat, learning from it, adapting their tactics. Daehyun knew he couldn't rely on surprise forever. He needed to stay ahead, to keep evolving faster than the enemy could respond. But tonight he had given these people hope. That would have to be enough. News of the victory at Rexar 7 spread through both fleets like wildfire. On Sentrax coalition command ships, analysts studied the battle recordings with growing alarm. The Draknari had fought differently, moved differently, thought differently. After 2 years of predictable engagement, something had changed. Intelligence reports flooded back to coalition headquarters. The Draknari had a new commander directing strategy. Identity unknown, tactics completely unlike traditional Draknari doctrine. Coalition officers began calling this mysterious figure the Ghost, because he seemed to anticipate their every move before they made it. Aboard Velthor's flagship, Daehyun was promoted to strategic advisor with formal ceremony. Many Draknari attended reluctantly, their expressions showing barely hidden resentment. General Raxthor stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, radiating disapproval. But Velthor had made his decision. Daehyun of Earth has proven his worth. He will advise on all strategic matters. His recommendations will carry my full authority. After the ceremony, Daehyun formed his inner circle. Besides Taemin, who had become his constant companion and translator, he recruited Haewon, a brilliant Draknari engineer. Haewon was older than most warriors, with scarred scales and a practical mind. She had spent 40 years designing and maintaining warships. "I don't care if you're human Draknari or a space fungus," Haewon told Daehyun at their first meeting. "If you can keep my ships flying and my crews alive, I'll help you however I can." Daehyun appreciated her bluntness. "I need to understand your ship's capabilities better. Not just what the manuals say, but what they can really do." Haewon's eyes lit up. "Finally, someone who asks the right questions. Come, I'll show you things that will make your tactical options much more interesting." Over the next weeks, Daehyun absorbed everything Haewon could teach him. He learned that Draknari ships could temporarily overcharge their shields at the cost of weapon power, that their engines could produce brief bursts of speed that sensors often missed, that their armor was strongest on the dorsal surface, a holdover from their evolution on a planet with dangerous flying predators. With this knowledge, Daehyun began implementing a campaign of mobile warfare. He abandoned the Draknari tradition of defending fixed positions. Instead, his forces became fluid, striking where the enemy was weak and retreating before reinforcements arrived. He studied military history from Earth, applying lessons from humanity's greatest commanders. From Sun Tzu, he took the principle of deception, making the enemy see what they expected instead of what was real. From Genghis Khan, he borrowed the concept of mobile warfare, using speed and flexibility to overcome superior numbers. From Hannibal, he learned audacity, striking where the enemy thought themselves safe. The second engagement came at the Torval Nebula. Centrax forces expected to sweep through a Draknari supply convoy. Instead, they found what appeared to be a lightly defended merchant fleet. "They're taking the bait," Taemin reported from his sensor station. Daehyun watched the tactical display with calm intensity. The Centrax warships moved in confidently, preparing to destroy the defenseless transports. What they didn't know was that half the merchant ships were actually warships with powered-down weapons and modified sensor signatures. "Now," Daehyun said. The disguised warships activated simultaneously. At point-blank range, their first volley was devastating. The Centrax formation disintegrated into chaos. Before they could recover, actual Draknari military vessels emerged from hiding in the nebula's dense gas clouds. The battle was over in minutes. The Centrax lost 8 ships without destroying a single target. The third victory came at Pelkor Station. The fourth at the Rimward Gate. Each time, Daehyun used completely different tactics. Each time the Centrax were caught off guard. They began to fear the Ghost, this invisible commander who seemed to read their minds. But Daehyun knew the truth. He wasn't winning through supernatural insight. He was winning because he studied his enemy obsessively. He analyzed every battle recording, every communication intercept, every scrap of intelligence. He looked for patterns in how Centrax commanders thought and reacted. "You barely sleep," Taemin observed one night, finding Daehyun still working at 0300 hours. "Can't afford to," Daehyun replied, not looking up from his analysis. "Every hour I rest is an hour the enemy uses to adapt. I need to stay ahead. You'll kill yourself from exhaustion. Better than getting others killed from lack of preparation." Taemin sat down across from him. "The crew worships you, you know. They call you their savior. The ghost who turned the war around." Daehyun finally looked up, his expression troubled. "They shouldn't. We're winning battles, not the war. The Centrax still have 30 times our numbers. All I'm doing is buying time." "Time for what?" "I don't know yet." "That's the problem." Daehyun rubbed his tired eyes. "We can't win through attrition. Even if we maintain a favorable kill ratio, eventually they'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. I need to find a way to force a negotiated peace, not pursue total victory." "Is that possible?" "It has to be, because the alternative is watching your entire species die fighting an unwinnable war." The words hung heavy in the air. Taemin had never heard Daehyun speak so bluntly about the strategic situation. The young Draknari had been caught up in the excitement of victories, the pride of finally winning battles. He hadn't fully considered the larger picture. "What do you need?" Taemin asked quietly. "Information. I need to understand the Centrax coalition better. Not just their military tactics, but their politics, their economy, their culture. There has to be a weakness there, something beyond the battlefield. I can help with that. I studied xenopolitics before joining the military. It's how I learned about Earth." Daehyun smiled slightly. "Then you're promoted. You're not just my translator anymore. You're my intelligence analyst." Over the following days, Taemin compiled everything he could find about the Centrax coalition. Meanwhile, Daehyun continued planning military operations. The fifth victory came at Xerxes Prime, where Draknari forces ambushed a Centrax fleet by hiding ships inside the planet's ring system. After each victory, Daehyun made sure to broadcast the results on open channels. He wanted the Centrax to know they were losing, wanted their confidence to erode. Psychological warfare was as important as tactical warfare. But he also noticed something troubling. General Raxthor's faction was growing more vocal in their opposition. They held private meetings, whispered in corridors, spread rumors that Daehyun was making the Draknari soft and cowardly. Velthor called Daehyun to his private quarters one evening. The commander looked older than when they first met, worn down by years of war and the weight of leadership. "The victories continue," Velthor said. "My people celebrate in the streets, but not everyone celebrates, I know. Raxthor and his followers. They see your methods as dishonorable. Hiding, deception, retreat. These things go against everything Draknari culture teaches." Daehyun nodded. "I understand. But would they prefer honorable extinction to dishonorable survival?" Many would say yes. They believe death with honor is preferable to life with shame. "And what do you believe?" Velthor was quiet for a long moment. "I believe I am responsible for the survival of my people. Honor matters, but not more than existence itself. The dead have no honor because they have nothing at all. Then we continue? We continue. But know that you have enemies among our own forces. Be careful, Daehyun. Some forms of danger come from behind, not ahead." That night, Daehyun stood alone in the observation deck staring at the stars. 6 victories now. 6 impossible wins against a vastly superior enemy. His reputation as the Ghost was growing, becoming legend. But legends were just stories. And stories didn't account for exhaustion, fear, or the crushing weight of responsibility. Every decision he made determined who lived and who died. Every strategy put lives at risk. He thought about Earth, about the court-martial that drove him away. His former commanders had called him weak for valuing lives over strategic objectives. Now he was doing the exact opposite, sacrificing individuals for the greater good of saving an entire species. Had he changed, or had circumstances forced him to become what he once despised? The door opened behind him. HFY entered, carrying 2 containers of hot liquid. "Figured you'd be here brooding," she said, offering him 1 container. "It's Draknari tea. Might taste strange to you, but it helps with stress." Daehyun accepted gratefully and took a sip. It was bitter and slightly spicy, but warming. "Thank you." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. "The young ones think you're invincible," HFY said eventually. "The old ones like me know better. We see the toll this takes on you. I'm fine. You're not. But you will be." "Know why?" She turned to look at him with ancient, knowing eyes. "Because you understand what most commanders never learn. Victory isn't about glory or honor or proving your superiority. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's why we'll follow you, even when it hurts our pride." Daehyun felt unexpected emotion tighten his throat. He had been alone for so long, carrying his burden without support. Now these alien warriors were becoming something he never expected. They were becoming family. The Centrax Coalition Supreme Council convened an emergency session. 6 species sat around the circular table, each representing their worlds and fleets. The holographic display at the center showed a star map with red marks indicating recent defeats. Too many red marks. 7 losses in 3 months, said Council Member Thorax, his insectoid mandibles clicking with agitation. "This is unacceptable. The Draknari were defeated. They should have surrendered months ago." "They have a new commander," another council member noted. "Intelligence confirms his existence, though we have no identity yet. They call him the Ghost." "Ghosts can be hunted," said Admiral Krexval, standing to address the council. He was a tall, 4-armed warrior from the Zentari species, decorated with 40 years of combat ribbons. "Give me operational command and I will destroy this Ghost and his Draknari pets." The council debated for hours before finally agreeing. Krexval was their best military mind, a veteran of countless campaigns. If anyone could counter this mysterious new commander, it was him. Krexval returned to his flagship and immediately began studying every scrap of data about the recent defeats. He watched battle recordings dozens of times, analyzing every movement, every decision. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The Ghost was brilliant but not supernatural. He relied on deception, mobility, and exploiting predictable responses. The Centrax commanders had fallen for his tricks because they expected the Draknari to fight traditionally. Once you understood that the Ghost would never do the expected thing, his strategies became more predictable. "He thinks several moves ahead," Krexval told his staff. "He anticipates our responses and plans accordingly, so we must learn to not respond as he expects." 3 weeks later, Centrax intelligence predicted a Draknari raid on the supply depot at Gorvak Station. It was an obvious target, barely defended, full of valuable resources. Exactly the kind of opportunity the Ghost had exploited before. Krexval studied the tactical situation carefully. If he were the Ghost, how would he attack? The depot sat near an asteroid field, perfect for hiding ships. There was a nearby gas giant with multiple moons for concealment. The Ghost would probably split his forces, create distractions, hit from multiple angles. So Krexval set a trap. He publicly reduced the depot's defenses, making it even more tempting. But he positioned 3 full battle groups in hidden locations around the system. Wherever the Draknari appeared, they would be caught in a kill zone. Aboard his flagship, Daehyun reviewed the intelligence about Gorvak Station. Taemin had flagged it as a priority target. The depot held medical supplies desperately needed by Draknari colonies. "It's perfect," Taemin said enthusiastically. "Light defenses, valuable cargo, multiple approach vectors." But something bothered Daehyun. He couldn't identify what exactly, just a feeling that something was wrong. The target was too perfect, too obvious. "Have the Centrax changed commanders recently?" he asked. Taemin checked his intelligence reports. Yes, actually. Admiral Krexaval was given supreme command of coalition forces 3 weeks ago. He's their most decorated officer. Daehyun pulled up everything he could find about Krexval. 40 years of service. Brilliant tactician. Known for patience and careful planning. Not someone who would leave a valuable depot poorly defended, unless it was bait. I think it's a trap, Daehyun said slowly. Based on what evidence? Felthor asked, joining the conversation. Based on the fact that their new commander isn't stupid. Krexaval has been studying our tactics. He knows we look for easy targets. This feels like he's giving us exactly what we expect to see. So we don't attack? Taemin asked, disappointed. Daehyun stared at the star map, thinking. If he didn't attack, he looked overly cautious. If he did attack and it was a trap, he'd lose ships and credibility. But there was a third option. We attack, but not the way he expects. We'll use minimal forces, just enough to trigger his trap. When he springs it, we learn where his hidden forces are positioned. That intelligence is worth more than the depot supplies. It was a calculated risk. Daehyun sent only 4 ships to Gorvak Station, led by one of his more cautious commanders. Their orders were simple. Probe the defenses, engage briefly, then retreat at the first sign of trouble. The Draknari ships approached the depot carefully. Everything seemed normal. The light defense force guarding the station moved to intercept. Then Krexval's trap closed. Battle groups emerged from hiding on 3 sides. The Draknari were suddenly outnumbered 15-1. Their commander immediately ordered retreat, but Krexval had positioned his forces perfectly. 2 Draknari ships were destroyed before they could reach hyperspace. The other 2 escaped damaged. In his command center, Daehyun watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. They had lost ships and crew, but he now understood what they were facing. Krexval was a true peer, someone who could predict and counter his strategies. The defeat shook the Draknari forces. It was their first significant loss since Daehyun took command. General Raxthor seized the opportunity. The human has led us to disaster, Raxthor declared at an emergency council meeting. His cowardly tactics invited this trap. If we had attacked with honor and full force, we would have overwhelmed any ambush. And lost twice as many ships, Velthor countered. The human intentionally sent minimal forces to probe their defenses. He suspected a trap and acted accordingly. He suspected yet sent our warriors to die anyway. The council chamber erupted in argument. Half the officers supported Daehyun, pointing to his previous victories. The other half, led by Raxthor, called for returning to traditional Draknari military doctrine. Daehyun sat quietly, letting them argue. Taemin leaned close and whispered, "Say something." "Defend yourself." "No point," Daehyun replied softly. "They're not arguing about tactics. They're arguing about whether to trust an outsider with their survival. No words of mine will change that." Finally, Velthor stood and the room fell silent. "We will continue with strategic advisor Daehyun's leadership. He has earned that right through 7 victories. One setback does not erase that record." Raxthor stood as well. "Then you risk our entire species on the judgment of an alien who has already been proven fallible. I cannot support this decision." "Your opposition is noted, General, but the decision is made." Raxthor left the chamber, followed by several officers. The split in Draknari command was now open and undeniable. That evening, Daehyun sat alone in his quarters, staring at casualty reports. 2 ships destroyed, 47 crew members dead, 47 beings who trusted his leadership and paid for his gamble with their lives. HFY found him there hours later. Brooding again? "People died because of my decision. People die in war." "You know that," she sat down heavily. "The question isn't whether people die. It's whether their deaths meant something. Those 47 crew members gave us intelligence that might save thousands. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. That's how you know you're still human." She paused. "Well, metaphorically. You know what I mean." Despite himself, Daehyun smiled slightly. "Thanks. Don't thank me. Thank them by using what they gave us. You said this Krexval is your peer. So study him. Learn how he thinks. Figure out how to beat him." After HFY left, Daehyun pulled up every record he could find about Krexval's past campaigns. He studied them obsessively, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything he could exploit. Krexval was methodical and patient. He didn't take unnecessary risks. He planned carefully and executed precisely. His greatest strength was his ability to predict enemy behavior, which meant Dae-hyun needed to become unpredictable in a different way. Not just tactically, but strategically. He needed to find an approach Krexval couldn't anticipate because it wouldn't occur to him. Tae-min entered with fresh intelligence reports. I've been researching like you asked. The Centrax coalition isn't as unified as they appear. Explain. It's an alliance of 6 species held together by economic treaties and mutual defense pacts, but each species contributes forces independently. They coordinate at the highest level, but there are always tensions about resource allocation, strategic priorities, that sort of thing. Dae-hyun sat up straighter. So they have built-in communication and coordination problems? In theory, yes. In practice, they've worked together long enough that those problems are usually minor. Usually, Dae-hyun repeated thoughtfully. What if we could make those problems major? How? By making them distrust each other. By creating situations where it looks like one species is prioritizing their own interests over coalition goals. By exploiting the natural tensions that exist in any alliance. Taemin's eyes widened. You want to break apart the coalition? I want to make them weak from within. Krexval is brilliant at military tactics, but tactics only matter if your forces follow orders efficiently. What if his forces couldn't coordinate properly? What if they hesitated because they weren't sure who to trust? Taemin struggled for words. That's a completely different kind of warfare. It's the only kind we can win. We can't beat them through force. We can't even beat them through better tactics anymore. Not with Krexval learning our patterns. But if we can make them fight themselves as much as they fight us, maybe we have a chance. Dae-hyun stood and walked to his star map. He was facing a worthy opponent for the first time. Krexval had proven he could adapt and counter traditional 3 weeks of intensive research revealed what Dae-hyun needed to know. The Centrax coalition was an alliance built on economic necessity, not loyalty or shared values. 6 species with different cultures, different priorities, and different levels of military contribution. Taemin spread his findings across the holographic display. The Zentari Krexval species provide 40% of coalition military forces. They see themselves as the senior partner and often make unilateral strategic decisions, which the other species resent, Dae-hyun noted. Exactly. The Korvathi provide most of the fleet's logistics and supply chains. They're merchants by nature, more interested in profit than conquest. The other 4 species contribute smaller forces but vote equally on coalition decisions. Dae-hyun studied the complex web of relationships. So we have a power imbalance masked by democratic structure, economic interdependence creating resentment, and military decisions made by species who don't always agree on goals. It's held together so far because they've been winning. Success hides internal problems. Then we make them stop winning. But more importantly, we make them blame each other for their losses. Over the next month, Dae-hyun launched a campaign of subtle warfare. Instead of attacking military targets, he focused on supply convoys. But he was selective. He targeted Korvathi merchant vessels while leaving Zentari military transports alone. The Korvathi merchants complained to the Coalition Council. Why were their ships being destroyed while Zentari vessels were ignored? Were the Zentari military protecting their own at the expense of coalition partners? Dae-hyun intercepted and modified communications between coalition species. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to create confusion. Orders would be slightly delayed. Reports would contain minor inaccuracies. Nothing that compromised security directly, but everything that bred suspicion. This feels dirty, Taemin admitted one evening. We're not fighting honorably. No, Dae-hyun agreed. We're fighting smart. Honor doesn't matter if your entire species is extinct. Is that what you told yourself on Earth, when you refused to bomb that city? The question caught Dae-hyun off guard. Taemin rarely challenged him directly. What do you mean? You chose honor over military effectiveness then. You saved civilians even though it cost your side strategic advantage. Now you're arguing the opposite. That effectiveness matters more than honor. Dae-hyun was quiet for a long time. The situation was different. I had a choice between killing innocents or finding another way. Here the choice is between using every advantage we have or watching your people die. But where's the line? How do we know when we've gone too far? I don't know, Dae-hyun admitted honestly. I struggle with that every day. All I can do is make the best decisions I can with the information I have and live with the consequences. Taemin sat down heavily. I used to think war was simple. Good versus evil, honor versus dishonor, victory versus defeat. You've shown me it's much more complicated than that. War is never simple. Anyone who tells you it is has never actually fought one. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Taemin spoke again. Tell me about Earth, about the court-martial. The whole story, not just the summary. Daehyun hesitated, but something in Taemin's expression made him want to share. We were fighting a rebellion on a colony world. The rebel leadership had taken over a major city and were using civilians as shields. My superiors wanted to bombard the city from orbit. Quick, efficient, decisive. But you refused. I argued for a ground assault instead. Slower, riskier for our troops, but it would minimize civilian casualties. My commander said I was letting emotions override military judgment. The good soldiers follow orders, not their conscience. What happened? I was given a direct order to authorize the bombardment. I refused. They arrested me on the spot and proceeded with the attack anyway. Daehyun's voice grew quiet. 30,000 civilians died in the bombardment. The rebel leadership escaped through underground tunnels my commander hadn't bothered to investigate. We won the city but lost the war because the brutality turned the entire colony against us. So you were right. I was right about the tactics, but I was wrong to think one person's refusal could stop it. All I did was ruin my career and accomplish nothing. The civilians died anyway. Taemin moved closer. You're wrong. You accomplished something important. You proved that one person can stand up for what's right, even when it costs them everything. That matters, does it? Those 30,000 are still dead. Yes, but somewhere in that city someone survived who would have died in the bombardment. Maybe dozens of someones, hundreds. You don't know who they are or how their survival changed things, but they're alive because you tried. Daehyun felt unexpected emotion tighten his throat. For 3 years he had carried the guilt of that failure. Believing his stand accomplished nothing, he had never considered that his refusal might have saved anyone. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For helping me see it differently. They were interrupted by an urgent communication from Velthor. We have a situation. You need to see this immediately. In the command center, Velthor displayed an intercepted message. It was from a Korvathi merchant captain to Coalition headquarters, complaining that Zentari military vessels had refused to protect a convoy, resulting in its destruction by Draknari raiders. This is the 4th such complaint this week, Velthor said. The coalition is beginning to fracture. Daehyun felt satisfaction mixed with unease. His plan was working, but he was watching an alliance of 6 species tear itself apart. Beings who had cooperated for years were now suspecting each other of betrayal. Is this victory? He wondered aloud. Haewon, who had joined them, snorted. Victory is when your people survive. Don't torture yourself with philosophy. But Daehyun couldn't help it. He was using the same kind of manipulation and deception his Earth commanders had used to justify their brutal tactics. The difference, he told himself, was that he was targeting military and political structures, not civilians. But was that really so different? General Raxthor entered the command center, his expression hostile as always. The humans' tactics continue to erode our honor. Now we fight not like warriors, but like assassins in the shadows. We fight like survivors, Velthor replied firmly. Your honor means nothing to the dead, Raxthor. Perhaps death with honor is preferable to victory with shame. Then die honorably if you wish. But do not take the rest of our people with you. Raxthor's eyes blazed with fury, but he controlled himself. This conversation is not over. He left without being dismissed, a deliberate insult. He's becoming dangerous, Haewon observed. He has followers among the traditional warriors. They might do something foolish. Let me talk to them, Daehyun suggested. You? Velthor looked skeptical. They already hate you. Talking will only make it worse. Maybe, but I need to try. If the Draknari military splits, we lose everything regardless of what the coalition does. That evening, Daehyun requested a meeting with Raxthor and his officers. To his surprise, they agreed. He entered their gathering room alone, unarmed, facing a dozen hostile warriors. Raxthor stood at the head of the group. Speak, human. Tell us why we should continue following your dishonorable path. Daehyun looked at each of them in turn. I'm not going to lie to you or tell you what you want to hear. My tactics are not honorable by Draknari standards. I use deception, ambush, and psychological warfare. I do this because it's the only way you survive. We survived for 10,000 years without human interference, one officer growled. And for 3 years you've been dying. Your honor didn't protect you from the Coalition's superior numbers and technology. It just made you predictable. Better to die with honor than live with shame. Is it? Daehyun challenged. When you're dead, who remembers your honor? Who tells the stories of your courage? Nobody. Because your entire species is extinct. Honor exists only for the living to remember and celebrate. The dead care nothing for it. Raxthor stepped forward, towering over Daehyun. You speak of things you do not understand. Draknari honor is not about glory or celebration. It is about living according to our values regardless of cost. Then your values are leading you to extinction. Is that what you want? For Draknari culture, history, and people to vanish from the universe because you refuse to adapt? Adaptation is for prey animals. Warriors stand and fight. Daehyun met his gaze steadily. I was a warrior on my world. I stood for my principles even when it cost me everything. I refused an order that violated my values. I lost my career, my reputation, everything I had worked for. But I don't regret it because I saved lives. Then you understand honor. I understand that honor without wisdom is just stubbornness. I understand that sometimes the most honorable thing you can do is set aside your pride to protect those who depend on you. Daehyun paused. You want to fight honorably? Then fight to protect your people, not your reputation. The room was silent. Raxthor stared at him for a long moment. You are brave to come here alone. Raxthor said finally. That at least is honorable. But bravery does not make you right. I don't claim to be right. I claim to be effective. If you have a better way to save your people, I'll support it. But if you don't, then stop undermining the strategy that's keeping them alive. Raxthor turned away. Leave us. We will disc. 2 months of careful manipulation had fractured the Coalition's unity. Korvathi merchants refused to transport supplies for Zentari military operations. 3 member species had filed formal complaints about unequal burden sharing. Admiral Krexaval spent more time mediating disputes than planning battles, but Daehyun knew this wouldn't last forever. Eventually, the Coalition would recognize the manipulation and unite against their common enemy. He needed to strike now while their command structure was in chaos. I want to attack Vorn Station, Daehyun announced at the strategic planning meeting. The room went silent. Velthor stared at him. Vorn Station is Coalition military headquarters. It's defended by overlapping fleet positions and fortress weapons platforms. No one has successfully attacked it in 300 years. Which is exactly why they won't expect us to try, Daehyun replied calmly. Haewon pulled up tactical data on the station. It's surrounded by defensive positions from all 6 member species. Even if we somehow penetrated those defenses, we'd be torn apart by the station's own weapons. That's true if we attack conventionally, Daehyun agreed. But the Coalition's greatest strength is also their critical vulnerability. Each member species has different communication protocols, response times, and tactical doctrines. If we can create enough chaos, the defenders will become paralyzed by conflicting orders and delayed responses. Taemin displayed intelligence reports. The station coordinates all Coalition military operations. If we can disable or capture it, the entire war effort collapses. Or we lose every ship we commit to the attack, Raxthor countered, surprisingly present at the meeting. Since their conversation, the general had been less openly hostile, though still skeptical. That's the risk, Daehyun acknowledged. But the alternative is fighting a war of attrition we cannot win. This is our best chance to force a negotiated peace. Velthor studied the tactical display for a long time. Explain your plan. Daehyun manipulated the hologram, highlighting different approach vectors. We'll need 3 elements. First, a massive diversion to draw Coalition forces away from the station. Second, electronic warfare to blind their sensors and confuse their communications. Third, a small fast strike team to penetrate the station's defenses during the confusion. 3 elements require splitting our forces, Raxthor noted. If any element fails, the others are doomed. True, that's why timing and coordination are critical. Daehyun looked at each officer in turn. I won't lie to you. This operation could end the war in either total victory or absolute defeat. But doing nothing guarantees slow defeat anyway. The debate lasted for hours. Officers argued about feasibility, risk, and alternatives. Raxthor surprised everyone by eventually supporting the plan. It is audacious to the point of madness, the general said. But perhaps that is what we need. A glorious strike at the enemy's heart. If we must gamble, let us gamble greatly. Velthor made the final decision. We proceed with the operation. Commander Daehyun will coordinate overall strategy. I will lead the main fleet. General Raxthor will command the diversionary force. Taemin will lead the infiltration team. Me? Taemin looked shocked. You speak multiple coalition languages and understand their protocols better than anyone, Daehyun explained. Plus, I trust you completely. You're the right choice. Over the next 3 weeks, they prepared obsessively. Hae-Won worked around the clock, modifying ships for the assault. Electronic warfare specialists practiced disrupting coalition communications. Combat teams trained for close quarters fighting aboard the station. Daehyun barely slept. Every detail had to be perfect. One mistake could doom the entire operation and the Draknari species with it. Late one night, Taemin found him in the planning room still working. You should rest, Taemin said. The operation launches in 12 hours. Can't. Still too many variables. Daehyun rubbed his tired eyes. Taemin sat down beside him. I wanted to thank you before we launch, in case things go wrong. Nothing will go wrong, you can't guarantee that. So I'm saying it now. Thank you for saving my people. Thank you for teaching me that honor and effectiveness don't have to be opposites. And thank you for being my friend. Daehyun felt emotion tighten his throat. Thank you for trusting me. For helping me become more than a disgraced failure running from his past. They sat together in silence, two beings from different worlds facing an impossible battle together. If we survive this, Taemin said quietly, what will you do?
I don't know.
I haven't thought that far ahead. You should. You deserve a future beyond this war. Daehyun smiled sadly. So do you. So do all of us. The operation began with the diversionary attack. Raxthor led 15 Draknari warships in a massive assault on coalition shipyards, 3 systems away from Vorn Station. It was the largest Draknari offensive in 2 years, impossible to ignore. Admiral Krexeval, commanding from Vorn Station, immediately recognized it as a potential feint. But he couldn't ignore such a large force. He dispatched reinforcements while keeping substantial defenses at the station. He's smart, Daehyun observed from his position aboard Velthor's flagship. He's anticipating deception. Then we must make the deception deeper than he can see, Velthor replied. Phase 2 began. Draknari electronic warfare ships positioned around the system started broadcasting conflicting signals. False fleet movements appeared on coalition sensors. Fake communications created contradictory orders. Coalition forces began responding to threats that didn't exist. The chaos was amplified by existing tensions between member species. Zentari commanders questioned Korvathi sensor reports. Korvathi logistics officers delayed supply runs to Zentari vessels. The carefully coordinated defense began to fragment. Now, Daehyun said quietly, Taemin's infiltration team approached the station hidden inside captured coalition transport vessels. They broadcast proper identification codes, stolen during previous raids. In the confusion of false alerts and conflicting orders, station security waved them through. Simultaneously, Velthor's main assault fleet emerged from hyperspace at maximum speed. Small, fast ships designed for one purpose: punch through to the station before the defenders could coordinate a response. Krexeval saw the real attack immediately. All forces converge on the station. Ignore the shipyard raid. But his orders took precious minutes to reach all coalition vessels. Each species' ships responded at different speeds using different communication protocols. The coordinated defense Krexeval envisioned became a staggered, confused response. Velthor's fleet hit the defensive perimeter like a spear. Draknari ships traded blow for blow with coalition defenders, accepting damage to maintain momentum. They needed only minutes, just long enough for the infiltration team to succeed. Inside the station, Taemin's team moved rapidly through maintenance corridors. They had memorized the layout, but station security was already responding to the external attack. Firefights erupted in narrow passages. Main communications hub is 2 levels up, Taemin reported over his comm. We're encountering heavy resistance. Push through, Daehyun ordered. Everything depends on reaching that hub. The infiltration team fought their way forward, losing members at every junction. By the time they reached the communications hub, only 5 of the original 12 remained. Coalition security forces had barricaded the entrance. Taemin knew they had minutes before reinforcements arrived. Plant the charges. We're blowing our way in. The explosion tore through the barricade. Taemin's team rushed into the communications hub, where station personnel frantically tried to coordinate the defensive response. A brief, brutal firefight left the room secured. "We're in," Taemin reported. "Beginning upload." His technical specialist connected their equipment to the station's main communication array. They had prepared a data package, evidence of how coalition leadership had manipulated member species for years, hiding casualties from some species while exaggerating others, funneling resources to favored partners, lying about strategic objectives. All of it was true. Daehyun's researchers had spent weeks compiling proof from intercepted communications. The coalition had kept its alliance together through systematic deception. Now that deception would be exposed on every frequency. "Upload complete," the specialist announced, broadcasting on all coalition channels. Throughout the defensive fleet, on every coalition vessel and command post, the evidence appeared simultaneously. Ship captains saw proof that their governments had been lied to. Officers discovered that their supposed allies had betrayed them repeatedly. The defensive coordination shattered completely. Coalition vessels hesitated, unsure who to trust or what orders to follow. Some demanded explanations from their command chains. Others refused to continue fighting until they received answers. In that moment of confusion and chaos, Velthor's fleet established orbital superiority around the station. Daehyun broadcast on open channels, his message reaching every coalition ship. "This is Strategic Advisor Daehyun of the Draknari Imperial Fleet. We have disabled Vorn Station's defenses and established control of the orbital space. Any vessel that powers down weapons and withdraws will be allowed to leave safely. We seek peace, not slaughter." It was a radical offer, mercy at the moment of victory. But Daehyun knew that massacre would only unite the coalition in hatred. Mercy might fracture them permanently. Krexval, aboard his command ship, watched his carefully cour. The aftermath of the battle left Vorn Station in controlled chaos. Draknari forces secured key sections while coalition personnel were confined to their quarters. The station itself was intact, but its command structure had collapsed completely. Daehyun stood in the main control center, now occupied by Draknari officers, watching status reports flood in. Coalition forces were retreating to their home systems. Some member species were already declaring independence from the alliance. The unity that had held for decades was unraveling. "We're receiving communication requests from 4 coalition species," Taemin reported, exhausted but alive. "They want to negotiate separately." "Separately," Velthor noted. "Not as a unified coalition." "Because they're not unified anymore," Daehyun said. "We showed them they never really were. Just 6 species pretending to be one, while their leadership lied to all of them." General Raxthor entered the control center, his armor scorched from battle. The diversionary attack on the shipyards had been brutal but successful, drawing away forces that could have reinforced the station. "A great victory," Raxthor said, approaching Daehyun. "You have proven your worth beyond any doubt, human." "I was wrong to oppose you." Daehyun turned to face him. "You weren't entirely wrong. My methods aren't honorable by your standards. They're just effective. Perhaps effectiveness is its own form of honor. You fought to protect beings not even of your own species. That is honorable regardless of method." It was as close to an apology as Raxthor would ever give. Daehyun accepted it with a nod. Hay-1 arrived with damage reports. "We lost 11 ships in the assault. 47 more are heavily damaged. Casualties are being compiled, but they're significant. Each number was a life." Daehyun forced himself to remember that. Victory had a cost always. "Begin repairs immediately," Velthor ordered, "and prepare for negotiations. If 4 coalition species want to talk, we'll talk." Over the next 3 days, representatives from coalition member species arrived at the station. They came separately, refusing to meet with each other. The alliance that had seemed unbreakable was already splitting into factions. Daehyun attended the negotiations as an advisor, though he mostly observed. This was Velthor's responsibility as commander, but the coalition representatives kept looking at him, this human who had brought their empire to its knees. The Korvathi ambassador spoke first. "We have reviewed the evidence you broadcast. Our government was unaware of the systematic deception by coalition leadership. We wish to withdraw from the alliance and establish a separate peace with the Draknari Empire." The Thalen representative nodded agreement. "Our species also seeks independent negotiations. We have no quarrel with the Dreknari beyond our forced participation in this war. One by one, coalition members distanced themselves from the alliance and from each other. Only the Zentari Krexval species maintained that the coalition could be saved if restructured fairly, but it was too late. The trust was gone, destroyed by the evidence Daehyun had broadcast and the defeat at Vorn Station. The coalition would fragment into independent systems within weeks. On the fourth day, a special request came in. Admiral Krexval wanted to speak with Daehyun personally, one commander to another. Velthor was suspicious, but Daehyun agreed. They met in a small conference room, guarded but private. Krexval entered alone, his forearms empty of weapons. He was tall and imposing, decorated with military honors from 40 years of service. But his eyes showed respect rather than hostility. "So the ghost has a face," Krexval said, sitting across from Daehyun. "I confess I expected someone more impressive." Daehyun smiled slightly. "Disappointed?" "Intrigued. Your species has no reputation as warriors. Humans are barely known beyond your local systems. Yet you defeated me. You defeated the entire coalition. How?" "I didn't defeat you through superior strength," Daehyun replied. "I defeated you by understanding what you couldn't see. Your coalition was built on lies and power imbalances. I just exposed the truth." Krexval leaned back. "I studied your tactics for months. Every engagement, every strategy. I learned to predict your deceptions. But this," he gestured to encompass the station and situation, "this was beyond tactics. You fought a different kind of war entirely. Because tactics alone couldn't win. You're brilliant, Admiral. If this was just military strategy, you would have beaten me eventually. So I had to change the battlefield itself, by turning us against each other, by making us doubt our own allies." Krexval's expression was thoughtful rather than angry. "On my world, such methods would be considered deeply dishonorable. On mine too, in some ways. But honor is a luxury of the strong. The Dreknari were dying. I did what was necessary to save them." Krexval was quiet for a moment. "I have fought wars across 40 systems. I have commanded fleets numbering in the thousands. I believed I understood warfare completely. You have shown me I understood nothing at all. That's not true. You understood conventional warfare perfectly. You just encountered an unconventional enemy. A human enemy. Perhaps that is the key." Krexval met Daehyun's eyes directly. "Tell me, what makes humans different? Why could you see what I could not?" Daehyun considered the question carefully. "Maybe it's because humans spent most of our history being weak. We weren't the strongest or fastest or most technologically advanced. We survived by being adaptable and clever, by finding advantages where none seemed to exist. Weakness as strength. An interesting philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's necessity. When you can't win through force, you learn to win through creativity. When you can't overpower your enemy, you learn to understand them better than they understand themselves." Krexval stood and walked to the window, looking out at the damaged coalition fleet retreating in the distance. "I came here to understand my defeat. I think I have learned more than I expected. What will you do now?" "Return to my people and help them navigate this new reality. The coalition is finished. We must find our place in a galaxy that no longer fears us." He turned back to Daehyun. "And you? What will the ghost do now that the war is over?" "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. You should. You have a gift for seeing possibilities others miss. The galaxy needs minds like yours, especially now during this period of change." Krexval moved toward the door, then paused. "One more question. Do you regret what you did? The deception, the manipulation, turning allies against each other?" Daehyun was silent for a long moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret every life lost on both sides. But I don't regret saving the Dreknari from extinction. Given the choice again, I would make the same decisions." An honest answer. "I respect that." Krexval nodded slowly. "You are a dangerous being, Daehyun of Earth. Dangerous because you are willing to do what must be done without seeking glory or avoiding guilt. I am glad we will not be enemies again." After Krexval left, Daehyun sat alone in the conference room. The war was essentially over. The coalition was fragmenting. The Dreknari would survive. He had succeeded in his mission. So why did he feel so empty? Taemin found him there an hour later. "The commander is asking for you. We're finalizing the peace terms. I'll be there in a moment." Taemin sat down beside him instead. "You should be celebrating. You saved my entire species. You accomplished what seemed impossible. I destroyed an alliance, turned allies against each other, exploited trust and cooperation as weapons. Is that really something to celebrate? The coalition was built on deception and inequality. You didn't create those problems. You just revealed them. And thousands died because of it. Thousands who would have died anyway in a war the Draknari were losing. You changed which thousands died and saved millions in the process. Taemin placed a hand on Daehyun's shoulder. You carry too much guilt for things beyond your control. Someone has to remember the cost. If we don't, we'll think war is glorious instead of tragic. They sat together in companionable silence. Finally, Taemin spoke again. Krexval was right, you know. You should think about your future. The war is ending. What comes next for you? I honestly don't know. I've been running from my past for 3 years, then fighting this war. I haven't had time to think about what I actually want. Maybe that's what you should do now. Not run, not fight. Just live. The idea seemed foreign to Daehyun. Living without purpose, without mission, without the weight of responsibility. Could he even do that anymore? The formal negotiations took another week. Peace treaties were signed separately with each coalition species. The Draknari would maintain control of their territory and establish trade relationships with former enemies. War reparations were negotiated, though Daehyun insisted they be reasonable. Creating economic hardship would just plant seeds for future conflicts. Throughout the process, coalition representatives kept asking about the mysterious ghost commander. Some wanted to meet him. Others wanted to hire him. A few wanted to kill him for what he had done to their alliance. Velthor held a ceremony in the station's main hall to honor those who had fallen during the war. Thousands of names were read aloud, Draknari and coalition alike. Daehyun insisted on including coalition casualties, much to the surprise of everyone present. They were soldiers following orders, just like RS. Daehyun explained when questioned. They deserve to be remembered too. General Raxthor stood B. 3 months after the Battle of Vorn Station, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. The Centrax coalition had officially dissolved, with each member species going their separate ways. Some formed new alliances based on genuine cooperation, rather than forced unity. Others chose isolation, rebuilding their fleets and economies independently. The Draknari Empire, once weeks from extinction, was experiencing a renaissance. Trade routes reopened. Colonies flourished. The population, which had been preparing for the end, now looked toward the future with hope. In the Imperial Hall on the Draknari homeworld, Velthor stood before the assembled High Command. He had been promoted to Supreme Commander, responsible for all Draknari military forces. But today's discussion wasn't about military matters. We need to address the human question, one council member said. Daehyun's departure created a vacuum in our strategic planning. We are vulnerable without him. We are stronger than you think, Velthor replied. He taught us his methods before he left. We learned to think beyond tradition, to adapt and innovate. That knowledge doesn't disappear with him. But what if another threat emerges? What if we need the ghost again? Then we use what he taught us to become our own ghosts. We don't depend on one being, no matter how brilliant. General Raxthor, now second in command, nodded agreement. The human showed us that our survival depends on adaptation, not rigid adherence to tradition. That is his true legacy, not the specific tactics he employed. Meanwhile, on the former coalition world of Korvar, the Korvathi government was dealing with the economic aftermath of war. Trade Minister Suk-jin reviewed the reconstruction proposals, noting how different the galaxy felt without coalition control. We're receiving trade offers from the Draknari, her assistant reported. Generous terms, actually. They want to establish partnerships rather than extractive relationships. The humans' influence, Suk-jin observed. He insisted on reasonable peace terms. Most conquerors would have demanded crushing reparations. Do you think he knew that showing mercy would make former enemies into future friends? I think he understood something most military commanders don't. That peace is harder to maintain than war, and you can't maintain peace by humiliating the defeated. Across the galaxy on the Zentari homeworld, Admiral Krexval had retired from active military service. He now taught at the Strategic Academy, training the next generation of officers. His lectures focused on unconventional warfare and the importance of understanding both your enemy and yourself. The greatest lesson I learned, he told his students, came from defeat. A human with no reputation, from a species considered militarily insignificant, dismantled the most powerful alliance in this sector. How did he do it? A young student raised her hand. Superior tactics? No. I matched his tactics eventually. Another guess? Better technology? The Draknari were outmatched technologically. Try again. Silence fell over the classroom. Finally, one student spoke hesitantly. He understood us better than we understood ourselves. Krexval smiled. Exactly. He studied not just our military capabilities, but our politics, our cultures, our internal tensions. He saw the coalition as 6 species pretending to be one, and he exploited that truth. The lesson is this: never underestimate an opponent who takes time to truly understand you. Far from these political and military centers, Daehyun's ship drifted through an unnamed star system. He had spent the past 3 months simply traveling, visiting worlds he had never seen, experiencing life without the weight of command. He landed on a peaceful colony world where different species lived together in harmony. No wars, no conflicts, just beings trying to build lives for themselves and their families. In a small cafe overlooking an alien ocean, Daehyun sat alone with a cup of strange but pleasant local beverage. For the first time in years, no one recognized him. No one needed him. No one depended on his decisions. It felt both liberating and unsettling. His communicator chimed. A message from Taemin, sent weeks ago but just now reaching him through relay stations. Hope you're well wherever you are. Things are good here. The Draknari are rebuilding faster than anyone expected. Haewon has been promoted to Chief of Fleet Engineering. Raxthor actually smiled the other day, which terrified everyone. We miss you, but we understand why you left. The galaxy's better because of what you did. Never forget that. Your friend Taemin. Daehyun smiled, reading the message twice. It was good to know they were thriving without him. That was what he had wanted, for them to find their own strength. Another message appeared, this one from an unknown sender. Curious, he opened it. Commander Daehyun, my name is Bora. I represent a coalition of independent worlds facing aggression from an expansionist neighbor. We have heard legends of the Ghost Commander, and humbly request your assistance. We can offer substantial payment and... Daehyun deleted the message without finishing it. Then another appeared, similar request from a different system. Then another. Apparently, word of his role in ending the coalition war had spread. Everyone wanted to hire the Ghost. But Daehyun wasn't interested in becoming a mercenary strategist, selling his skills to the highest bidder. That wasn't the future he wanted. He finished his drink and paid the shopkeeper, then walked along the beach. The alien sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Earth's sky never showed. It was beautiful and peaceful and exactly what he needed. His communicator chimed again. This time it was a live call, not a message. The ID showed it was from Earth. Daehyun hesitated, then answered. A familiar face appeared, older and more worn than he remembered. Commander Park, Daehyun said formally, addressing his former superior officer. Just Park now. I retired last year. Court-martialed for incompetence, if you want the truth. Park's smile was bitter. Turns out ordering the bombardment of that civilian city was the wrong call strategically and morally. Everything you said would happen came true. We lost the war and our reputation. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. I deserved it. I called to apologize. I was wrong and you were right. I let military protocol override basic human decency. You tried to show me a better way and I punished you for it. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Why now? That was 3 years ago. Because I heard rumors about a human strategist who saved an alien empire. Some of the details sounded familiar. Your unorthodox tactics, your focus on minimizing casualties, your ability to see solutions no one else considered. I realized it might be you. Does anyone else on Earth know? No. And I won't tell them if you don't want me to. But I wanted you to know that what happened to you wasn't fair. You deserve better. Thank you. That means something. What will you do now? Daehyun looked out at the alien ocean. I don't know yet. Figure out who I am when I'm not fighting someone else's war. If you ever want to come home, there are people who would welcome you. The ones who knew you were right all along. After the call ended, Daehyun sat on the beach watching the waves. The idea of returning to Earth held some appeal. But he wasn't ready yet. Maybe someday, but not now. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, are you a traveler?" He looked up to see a young alien child, no more than 7 or 8 in human equivalent years. Behind her, a parent watched nervously. "I am," Daehyun replied gently. "My teacher says travelers have the best stories. Do you have any stories?" Daehyun smiled. "A few." "What kind do you like?" "Adventures. With heroes and battles and happy endings." He thought about the war, about all the beings who had died, about the moral compromises and difficult choices. Then he thought about the Dreknari rebuilding, about former enemies becoming friends, about species finding peace after years of conflict. "I know a story about a species of warriors who faced impossible odds. They were brave and honorable, but they were losing everything. Then they learned that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in how you fight, but in understanding why you fight and who you fight for." The child sat down beside him, eyes wide with interest. Did they win? They survived, which is better than winning. They learned and grew and became something new. And they taught others that different doesn't mean enemy, that cooperation is stronger than conquest, and that mercy is more powerful than cruelty. That's a good story. Is it true? Every word. The child's parent approached and thanked Daehyun for his time, then led their child away. Daehyun watched them go, thinking about how stories spread and change. Someday someone would tell the tale of the Ghost Commander. He hoped they would tell it truthfully, including the costs and compromises, not just the victories. Weeks later, Daehyun received a final message from Velthor. It contained a video recording from a ceremony on the Dreknari homeworld. In the video, Velthor stood before a massive memorial. Carved into black stone were thousands of names, every Dreknari who had died in the war. At the top was an inscription in both Dreknari and human language, in memory of those who gave everything so that others might live. May we honor their sacrifice by building a peace worthy of their courage. Below that, a second inscription read, Strategic Advisor Daehyun of Earth showed us that the greatest victories come not from superior force, but from superior understanding. May we never forget that wisdom. Velthor spoke in the video. We dedicate this memorial not just to the fallen, but to the lesson their deaths taught us. That survival requires adaptation. That honor exists in many forms. A